Hello, my name is Cheryl Meyer, otherwise known as Cheryl M. Health Muse, and I am a health coach. I want to welcome you to my podcast, It Feels Good to Feel Good, Future-Proof Your Health. This is a weekly show that will share lifestyle changes that you can make to support your health yourself. Why do I want to share this information with you? 7 years ago, after being a business owner for 20 years, I woke up one morning in horrific pain where every bone and every joint in my body hurt. I went to the doctor, she ran lots of tests, and then she ran some more, and then she ran some more, and finally she called me and announced she was going to give me steroids, but there was absolutely nothing wrong with me and I should seek therapy. I knew something was wrong, I hurt. So she told me I would be on steroids for the rest of my life, and I refused that I was going to have a life of pain and pills. So why was I going to take steroids if there was nothing wrong with me? So I dug in and started researching, and I turned my business over to my staff. I found a functional doctor who confirmed that I had autoimmune disease by making a series of significant lifestyle changes that I could do for myself. 5 years later, I had returned to relative health. The best part is that I am now 70, and I feel better now than I did when I was 50. I no longer hurt, which is huge. I will always have autoimmune disease, but losing the pain has been amazing. I went back to school at 67 and became a health coach because I want to share everything that I learned with others. And I wrote a book called It Feels Good to Feel Good, Learn to Eliminate Toxins, Reduce Inflammation, and Feel Great Again, as the manual I wished that I had had when I got sick, and my book has won 13 awards. So whether you want to future-proof your health and grow old with dignity and grace without dementia and chronic pain and disease, which you don't need to get, or whether or not you already have a chronic condition like autoimmune disease or cancer or heart disease, and you want to learn about what things you can do to improve your long-term health, or whether you want to improve the health of your families and raise healthy children, because 53% of our children have a chronic condition, I look forward to sharing all this information with you. I will tell you, it truly does feel good to feel good, so let's get started. I look forward to having you join me here every week, and I want to give you hope that if you have chronic pain or chronic disease, you can make changes that will improve your health. And if you don't want to go there, you're going to be fine if you listen to the show and put these things into work. I want to give you information so that you can grow old and have a better tomorrow. So thank you for joining me. Let's get started. Hello. This show is going to be about a couple of different things, but they all connect together, and I hope that they give you information that you haven't had before that will help you live cleaner and healthier lives. The first thing is that I want to share with you that the County of San Diego made a huge announcement last week that they are going to ban glyphosate from being sprayed anywhere in their county. And I really applaud them for taking this move. And I hope that here in Los Angeles County, we do the same thing soon. Glyphosate is an ever-evolving category. And so I want to talk a little bit about why it's so important that San Diego is doing this, why glyphosate is so freaking awful for all of us, and what it's doing to us and to our environment and even to our fur babies. And then some of the newer things that have been discovered about glyphosate over the long run. And that will lead me a little bit into genetically modified, which we covered in an early show, but I think we need to cover again because half of genetically modified foods are things that have been made Roundup or glyphosate ready, which means they're really being doused with the chemical. So let's start with the fact that San Diego has made this declaration, and what does this mean? It means that all of their public lawns, their schoolyards, their parks, their golf courses, the little strips by the sidewalks of grass, and whatever food is grown in San Diego County is not going to be sprayed with Roundup or glyphosate. That's a really good thing. Glyphosate is an herbicide, and for years, Monsanto, who makes glyphosate, has been telling us that it was not harmful to us. And it ends up, not last year, but at the end of the year before, 2018, a lawsuit finally was won against Monsanto, and they had to cough up all their records for 20 years, and it was discovered that they had known for 20 years that glyphosate was causing cancer. The World Health Organization had come out 5 years before that and declared that glyphosate was probably a carcinogen, and that for animals, it definitely was a carcinogen. But now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the grandson of Robert Kennedy Jr., was the attorney who, in discovery, got all of Monsanto's records. And as a result, a man who had gotten lymphoma actually won a multi-million-dollar case against Monsanto because they had known that it was causing cancer. And he was a gardener on a schoolyard that was spraying it in a full suit, and he still got full-bore lymphoma. Since that time, there have been 2 more major lawsuits, one against Monsanto and one against glyphosate. But there are now 40,000 lawsuits pending of other people who are going after Monsanto. Since the first lawsuit was won, Bayer went ahead and purchased Monsanto, and that CEO has been under fire ever since he made that purchase. Well, he resigned last week because as this is now growing dramatically, he got under more and more fire about what made him go and buy Monsanto anyway, when it was obvious that there was going to be such a financial jeopardy. But more importantly, there has been such a jeopardy to our health. Now, in spite of the fact that those lawsuits were won, and the state of California actually sued them as well, and won that it should have a Prop 65 declaration on all Roundup products, Monsanto is in, they're contesting it because they don't want to lose the business. And so California, while they're waiting for this to come back to trial, has not indicated that everything with Roundup in it has to have the label for Prop 65 that says that you have to label it because it's a carcinogen. So I want you to be aware of this for a variety of reasons. If you're part of a PTA or part of a school board, go after your school district to stop allowing glyphosate to be sprayed on your schoolyards. If you're in a city, try to stop them from spraying Roundup on your public spaces. And remember, if you have a fur baby, it is a known carcinogen, and they walk on sidewalks and they run in the grass. So then they're taking it home and it's getting in their little bodies and it's causing them cancer. And cancer is on the rise in our fur babies by some huge percentage, and no wonder why. Because they are dramatically impacted by it. If you're a member of a golf course, ask your golf course not to be spraying glyphosate on the lawns where you're out having fun playing a game of golf while you're getting your daily dose of toxins. And then if you're buying conventional produce, I strongly recommend you take a look, and we'll put it right over this in this video. Take a look at the Dirty Dozen for 2019. The Dirty Dozen are the vegetables that have the most toxins on them. And if it's on that list, that's where you spend your organic money. You do not want a healthy dose of poison with your vegetables. And so EWG, the Environmental Working Group, puts out a list every year, and it changes every year, but they put out a list every year of what the dirtiest vegetables are that are available that are being conventionally grown on big farms. And if it's on the dirty side of that, you do not want to buy it unless it's organic. So protect yourself, protect your families, and spend your organic money to buy organic vegetables if it's something on that list, okay? But there's been also a couple of other new developments that I wanted to mention. The first one is the EPA just came out supporting Monsanto, and they declared that there's absolutely no proof that glyphosate causes cancer. That is simply not true. So when you're reading this stuff, you need to do your own research because they're coming at us with information from all sides. So just because the EPA says it's okay, it's not. It's harmful to us, to our pets, to our wildlife. And then when it's sprayed on our crops, it's going into our groundwater, off into our streams. It's killing life in our streams. Then it's going into our rivers and killing life in our rivers. And then it's going down to our oceans and killing whatever is close to where the river is pouring into the ocean. Algae is growing like crazy in dead zones. I know that the one that's the most common, that's happening the most, is down in Florida, but some of the Great Lakes are having huge algae outgrowths as well. That's all partly because of the herbicide and pesticides. Okay, this is an email I got this morning, and it says Monsanto and the rest of the biogiants promised that GMOs would reduce pesticide use. They would increase the nutritional content of food and boost farmers' profits and feed the world with increasing yields. And it ends up none of that is true. These biotech giants and GMO, there's two kinds of GMOs. One kind of GMO has been made Roundup ready, which means it's not just sprayed, it's drowned in glyphosate. If it's Roundup ready, it's drenched in glyphosate. And one of the crops that's being drenched in glyphosate is our wheat. And then it goes directly into our breads and into our processed food. It doesn't get washed. So with every bite, you're getting a healthy dose of glyphosate, which is a herbicide, which is toxin. And when you see any side, CIDE, understand that side means it kills something. So you don't want that in your body. So let me go through these one at a time. It would reduce pesticide use. What happened was the plants adjusted to it. And so they were using more and more and more to try to get the same effect that they did in the beginning back in 1998 when it started being used. So it did not lower pesticide use, it increased pesticide use. The second thing they said it would do is increase the nutritional content of the food. That's not true because one of the things that glyphosate does is it chelates all of the minerals out of the ground that it's growing in. So it's making us grow in deficient dirt. And then to make it worse, when we get what minerals we can get from the food up into our gut, glyphosate is blocking our bodies from actually absorbing those minerals into our body. So it's a double whammy. We're not getting enough in the first place, and then we're blocking what did get through. This is the reason that we are deficient in minerals like magnesium. Magnesium is responsible for 350 different enzyme reactions in the body. So make sure every time you go to your doctor, you have them check out what your magnesium level is, because it's highly likely that you are deficient in magnesium and then you need to take a supplement. Okay, so it's not increasing the nutritional content of food, it's actually lowering it. It's going to boost farmers' profits. Well, I don't know if that's happened exactly, but an awful lot of farmers are getting sick because of the glyphosate that they're using on their crops. So whether it's increasing their profits or not, I have to question, is it worth it? And it's not for feeding the world by increasing yields. It's not increasing yields. And if we want to feed the world, and that is possible to do, we need to stop wasting all the food that we waste. That alone would feed the world. And then we don't need the glyphosate to help us do that, or the GMOs. So instead, the biotech companies have turned glyphosate into one of the most widely and recklessly used herbicides in history, and they are destroying our natural biodiversity that's so critical for a resilient ecosystem. Okay, so that's an announcement that came out today. Then the second thing that came out, there was a study that was 20 years that was just completed at Stanford by a doctor named Dr. Michael Skinner. And the results were really staggering to Dr. Skinner. And I listened to a podcast with him and Jeffrey Smith, who runs the Institute for Responsible Technology, who has been anti-GMOs and anti-glyphosate being sprayed on everything for the entire 20 years that they've been doing it. And this was the conclusion of this study. It was rather surprising because no one had ever studied the multi-generational impact of glyphosate. It means it's not only about what it does to me and what it does to my children, it's about what it does to my grandchildren and then my great-grandchildren. This group discovered that the impact of Roundup on the first generation was relatively little, in spite of the fact that it is causing cancer and lymphoma in some people. However, it was also covering just a little bit on the second generation. By the time we got to the third generation, it was horrific. We had more and more birth defects. We had less and less births in the first place. And before you even conceived that child, there was all kinds of impact on their sexual organs and their kidneys, and huge amounts of disease and infertility. 90% of the third generation had disease issues. So we don't even know how bad this is going to get yet, because it's really evident in the third generation. So stay away from it. Don't let your gardener go spraying it on your lawn. I actually stopped my gardener from spraying it on mine and explained to him it was bad for him, and I, with autoimmune disease, sure didn't want it anywhere around me, so we have stopped. And as I pointed out to him, we're doing all of this because of weeds. Weeds. I'd rather have the weeds than get chemicals in my body that are going to kill me. So I want you to think about it. Take a look at the dirty, buy those organic, and clean up what you're eating in your home, and then take a stand in your community that you don't want that stuff sprayed. Okay? Now, it's causing leukemia. And so there was another interesting little blip that came across my husband and my eyes this morning. My husband's been writing a book called How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger. And he started talking about feline leukemia, which is the feline leukemia virus is something that spread dramatically 20 years ago and forward in our kitties. And believe it or not, one of the benefits of having a cat is it builds up your immune system. It's a good thing. It lowers your risk of lymphoma if you own a cat as a pet. I thought that was fascinating. I personally love cats. I've had kitties my entire adult life, and so that gives you another good reason to have kitties around. Whether you have a kitty or you have a dog, it's also, not only is it great because it gives you something to give love to, but it's a great way for you to release stress, because just petting your pet is a great way to release some of that stressful energy of your day. Okay? So non-Hodgkin's leukemia can be helped, and you can build up a defense against it just by having a kitty because of their defenses to feline leukemia. I thought that was fascinating. Okay, let's talk about the different kinds of GMOs and why this exasperates the problem. There are two different kinds of GMOs, and I did cover this in a previous show, but because of all this going on, I think this is really important to go over again. The first one is that they are making our fruits and our vegetables that we're growing Roundup ready, which means they have changed what would have happened normally in nature so that they can take massive amounts of this herbicide being sprayed on them. Craziness, I know. One of the reasons our wheat is getting drenched with glyphosate is because it increases the yield. The plant goes into apoplexy and it creates more wheat. But remember, all of that's going directly into products that you're eating. So that's the first kind of genetically modified food. I know that when the GMOs were on the ballot here in California, I did not understand the controversy, and they put out so much misinformation that they confused the issue so that that bill actually lost, and it shouldn't have. One of the things that I got told at my farmer's market was that, and it's a cute little story, but it ends up it's not true, that in the 1930s, there was a cartoon with Bugs Bunny from Warner Brothers, where he was holding a carrot that was orange. And it was this way to Cucamonga. And because that carrot was orange, the world went wild and they wanted orange carrots. So they engineered that more carrots would be orange, because up until that time, carrots were all different colors. Well, all the different colors of carrots are now being grown again because they're cute and they have different nutrients in them that are good for us. But it ends up that they didn't genetically modify it so that it became something that would never have happened in nature. They just coached it to be one of the natural colors it already was. And so that had nothing to do with genetically modified. That was engineered. It was not genetically modified. So be careful when people tell you that there's nothing wrong with being genetically modified because they've been engineering food since the beginning of time. They have been engineering food since the beginning of time, but they've just been crossbreeding it to bring out certain traits. That is not the same thing as working on it with science to create something that would never have happened in nature in the first place. So the first kind of genetically modified is made so that it can take vast amounts of glyphosate on it. The second kind of genetically modified is truly nothing that would ever have happened in nature. They are growing Bt toxin right in the plant. And Bt toxin is the gift that keeps on giving, because once it gets in our gut, it starts to replicate. And it does all kinds of nasty stuff to our body. Bt toxin is so that when a bug bites that plant, it blows up his little tummy so it doesn't eat the plant. Sounds like a good idea, right? Well, the first thing they discovered is we're losing our bees and our butterflies because they're biting into the plant and we're losing them all. And the bees and the butterflies are our cross-pollinators. So no pollinators, no food. So this is a very bad thing that we're losing our bee populations and our butterfly populations. Beyond that, Bt toxin is doing all this bad stuff to us because, again, it's in the plant. You can't wash it off. You can't wash off the stuff that's glyphosate ready either. It's in the plant, so you're not going to scrub it away. So this is what Bt toxin does to us. It destroys our gut lining. It's poking holes in our gut, and when it pokes holes in our gut, it's killing all of our good gut bacteria. While it's blowing up the plants that eat it on the outside, it's blowing up the good gut bacteria in our gut. It's killing our human kidney, liver, and spleen cells. It's killing the cell membrane of our red blood cells. It's replicating itself in our gut, so it's the gift that keeps on giving, but in the most negative way. It's a known allergen. Have you noticed how allergies are increasing, especially amongst our children? And sensitivities and allergies are increasing amongst adults. Well, part of the reason for that is Bt toxin. It's been found in fetal tissue and blood because it's in the birth mother, and it's going right through the umbilical cord to the baby. And it's showing that it mucks around with our reproductive cycle, damaging sperm cells and causing infertility. So not a good thing. So stay away from genetically modified. They are putting a label on it that says that it's not genetically modified, which is also something that comes from the Institute for Responsible Technology, and it has been their most effective campaign to date. So look for that label. If it doesn't have that label and it's on the genetically modified list of fruits and vegetables, which we'll also post right onto this video, then don't buy it, because you don't want something that's genetically modified. And you got to be careful. There's genetically modified tomatoes now, and there's genetically modified apples now. Zucchini is genetically modified. Potatoes are genetically modified. A regular potato not only is genetically modified, but it has 39 different chemicals on it unless it's organic. You really don't want to be eating that. And it's on potato chips too, so be careful what you're putting in your mouth. So all of this is important. Genetically modified foods include tomatoes, rice. I just read an article that if you're going to eat rice, the best brand is Landstrom's, which is a California brand of rice, and the best rice to eat is Californian because it's got a lower arsenic level than, let's say, Texas rice. Sorry, Texas, but apparently you have more arsenic in your ground than we have here in California. And we have a house part-time in Arizona, and we actually put a full water filter on because the water where we live in Sedona is loaded with arsenic. So you got to be careful because arsenic is a heavy toxic metal and it is very toxic. So you don't want things that have that in it. Some sweet corn is genetically modified. Summer squash, including zucchini, is genetically modified. Canola oil is genetically modified. Canola, the story with that, it's from Canada and it's ola, which is oil, but they also decided to name it canola because it kind of rhymed with granola, which made it sound like it was healthy. Canola oil is not good for you, and 90% of it is genetically modified. There is GMO yeast that has been approved. Alfalfa is genetically modified. Alfalfa is in a lot of supplements, so you got to be careful not to get a supplement even that has alfalfa that's been genetically modified. Cotton is genetically modified, so even the cotton that we're buying that's not organic, that's on our skin, the toxins are going right through our skin and into our bodies. Wheat is going to be genetically modified shortly. Sugar beets are genetically modified. Soy, 93% of soy is genetically modified. So that includes all the things that soy gets made into. And be careful, especially for infant formulas, because they have a lot of soy in them that's genetically modified. And you sure as heck don't want to be feeding that to your baby, your infant. Peas have been genetically modified. And then Hawaiian papaya has been genetically modified. So those are another place where you spend your budget on organics. So if it's on the Dirty Dozen list, you spend your money on organics. If it's on this GMO list, you spend your money on organics. And your body will celebrate because you're not putting all of those toxins into it. Okay? So that's pretty much all of this stuff. One more thing. As new studies come out that are contradicting what I'm saying, I want you to understand where the studies come from. In this country, we have allowed big business to do their own studies. So if chemical companies are doing their own studies, they're obviously going to favor the chemical company. They do them for a short enough period of time that they don't get to the point where it starts to cause trouble, and then they publish it and say, no problem. Big Food is doing their own studies. They're all doing their own studies, and they're all approved by our U.S. government, which is not protecting us. So join with your friends and neighbors and don't buy this stuff, because we can control it by where we spend our money, and we will start to see things shift. There's actually something known as GRAS, G-R-A-S, generally considered to be safe. And what that means is no study has been proven to show that it's not safe. It may be a study that didn't go far enough, or it may not have been studied at all. But if they are telling you it's okay and that it's GRAS, it doesn't mean it's okay. It means that it's only been studied so far that that's what the results were. So get savvy, learn what all these buzzwords mean, and then vote with caution, because we're talking about your health and your children's health. So start to vote with caution in terms of what you put into your body, okay? Other negative sides of conventional farming: it's destroying our fresh water supply. I haven't done my show on water yet, but if you think Flint, Michigan is an unusual situation, it is not. There are all kinds of disgusting things coming out of our water tap wherever you live, and even if you have a well. If you have a well, you should get it tested. If you have a municipal or a county water system, get the report. They do a report on what's in their water, and you should be aware. And if you need to, filter what's coming out of your tap at least, so that you are drinking water that's filtered and you are cooking with water that's filtered. In the beginning, when I got sick, we filtered the kitchen sink, but we now have put on total house systems in both our houses so that I am not getting the chemicals out of the tap because my body can't handle it with autoimmune disease, but frankly, neither can your body. So be careful what you drink. And then once it's filtered and it's healthy water, drink your body weight in ounces. I'm saying half your body weight in weight. Half your body weight in ounces. And if you're a big person like me, that's a lot of water. And so you may not want to drink quite that much, but at least drink 8 glasses of water a day. Your body needs water. And if you're drinking Coke, whether it's with sugar or without sugar, replace it with water with lemon. The lemon makes it turn alkaline when it gets to your gut, which is healthy for your body, and the lemon helps you balance your electrolytes, which is something I just learned because I got a kidney stone, and my urologist was so happy that I was putting lemon in my water because that balanced out the electrolytes in my body, so that was a good thing, okay? But conventional farming is using 70% of our fresh water supply, and yet the mixture of pesticides, nitrogen fertilizers, industrial chemicals, etc., is destroying our groundwater. So you have to be very careful what's in there. Okay, so that's all I want to say on the chemicals that are being sprayed on our food and the whole glyphosate issue, which you need to be educated about because it impacts you directly. The other thing I want to talk about is processed food today. We just did a show on sugar and how sugar is addictive and how sugar turns off the area of the brain that regulates our appetite, so that we get addicted to sugar because we don't know that we're full, and so we keep craving more and asking for more and wanting to eat more long past when we're hungry. When we're satiated, we don't even know we're satiated because our body keeps screaming for more because of the addiction. And that's all because of these little hormones that are turned off by the sugar. Well, there are a couple other things that turn those hormones off. So if you do a sugar detox, you might as well give up the other things at the same time. And the other things are in processed food. The first one that's in processed food is MSG. And you go, I don't eat processed food with MSG. I look at the label and it's not in there. Well, they figured out that we all knew that MSG wasn't good for us. And so what did they do? They now put it into processed food under 39 different names that you don't recognize as MSG. MSG is actually something that it's called an umami, I think. I hope I have that correct. It actually improves the flavor of what you're eating. And so as an umami, they put it into processed food so that it tastes really good. So they don't want to give up the MSG that they're putting in processed food. They want you to get addicted to it so that you eat more. And by eating more, then you want to buy more. So processed food, my rule with processed food is really simple. If you can't pronounce it, you put it back on the grocery store shelf. And if you don't know what it is, you put it back on the grocery store shelf. So one of the big ones that MSG is on the box as is natural flavors. Now it's not always, there are other things that go in that natural flavor category, but MSG is often on the box as natural flavors. So if it says natural flavors, I don't buy it. I buy processed food if I know what all the ingredients are. I buy Rao's spaghetti sauce, which probably has GMO tomatoes in it, so it's one of the few times that I'll buy something that I know is probably not the best of possible things, but it's as good as my mother's spaghetti sauce. So since I keep my toxic load very low, that's one of the places where I deviate. But what's in Rao's? Tomatoes, olive oil, basil, and some seasonings. That's it. It's a pure product. So I know that it probably has genetically modified tomatoes in it, but the rest of it is darn clean. So use the rule that it is, and some of those are really long chemical sounding words because they're chemicals and they're synthetics. And if you don't know what it is, your body doesn't know what it is either. So you don't want to feed it to your body because it doesn't know what to do with it. And it certainly isn't giving your body the nutrients it needs in order to survive. So it's really important that you limit how much of the processed food you're eating. And it doesn't matter if it's processed food coming out of a box or it's processed food coming out of your freezer. They all have chemicals in them that are addictive. Or if it's even processed food that you're getting in a restaurant. I don't know if you're aware, but a lot of restaurants now buy what they're fixing in little plastic baggies that they zap in the microwave. Have you ever wondered how a restaurant can have so many different items on their menu with these big menus where you flip through pages and pages and pages of offerings? How can they do that? They do that because they're buying all of that food in these little plastic baggies and then they're arranging it on your plate to look like it's fresh and just cooked, and it's not. And that's also processed and it's also loaded with all kinds of chemicals that you can't pronounce. So you have to be really careful. What do you want your physical body to be? Because you literally are what you eat physically. So if you're eating junk, if you're eating toxins, if you're eating heavy toxic metals, your body, your brains, your organs, your skin, and everything that's in your physical body becomes junk, becomes toxic, and becomes processed. That's a quote from a gentleman named the Health Ranger from the documentary The Truth About Cancer. So take care of your body because it's the only place you have to live. When I first got sick, I went to Orange County to a nutritionist to try to help me get a handle on what was going wrong with my body, because the conventional doctor that I went to at the time had no clue what was going on with me. And one of the first things he said to me is, if you don't take care of your body, where are you planning to live? And it hit me right between the eyes because I had never thought about that. So I sort of paid attention pretty quickly because I knew I wanted to live in this body, because if I'm not living in this body, I'm not here. I actually gave a magnet to my functional doctor's 10-year-old daughter that said that if you're not taking care of your body, where are you planning to live? And it had my cute little broccoli on it, and they put it on their refrigerator because she was wanting to eat with her girlfriends at school every day, and she was eating all the junk that they were bringing instead of eating the good food that she was packing the lunch with her mother to take to school. So it took about a month, and all of a sudden she looked up one day and looked at her mother and said, if I'm not going to be living in my body, where am I going to live? And her mother said to her, you're not. That's the point. If you don't take care of your body, you have no place to live, which means you will die. You will not be here. Well, ever since then, she has anteed up, and she is being a good girl and eating all the fruits and the vegetables and the healthy food that she's taking to school in her lunch bag. And she's become the leader of the pack because for the first time she understood why she was eating all that healthy food instead of all that junk. So think about it. If you're eating all that junk, where are you planning to live? And this also goes for what meat you eat. You are what your animal eats. So if you're eating conventionally farmed meat, you're eating meat that has hormones and antibiotics and all kinds of crud. Ooh, that's something I forgot to tell you about glyphosate. All kinds of crud in it, and you become what that animal ate. So if he got hormones that were making him have baby cows faster, you got all those hormones. If he had antibiotics given to him so that he could land on your plate and you could eat him, then you're getting all those antibiotics. I forgot to tell you one thing about glyphosate, so we're going to go back for a minute. Glyphosate was originally created to be an antibiotic. So what it does when it gets to your gut is it's killing all the good gut bacteria, which is allowing all the bad gut bacteria to flourish. We just took a class where it was commented, somebody asked, what does all that bad gut bacteria do? It's there to decompose you. If I did tell you that earlier, I think it's important enough that I repeat it. That bad gut bacteria is in your body to help you decompose when you're dead. So if you're cleaning out all the good gut bacteria and all you're left with is the bad gut bacteria, obviously that cannot be good for your long-term health. So think about it. Okay, processed food. One of the problems with processed food is that it's loaded with GMOs. I just explained what that meant. And I bought a book, which I strongly recommend. It kind of turned my hair gray when I started to read it, but it's called Pandora's Lunchbox: How Processed Food Took Over the American Meal. And it's all about the synthetic ingredients that are cheap, addictive, fake, and have no nutritional value. It's all fake food and how they got us to eat it instead of real food. You can't believe what goes into the processed food. This was a woman who was the lead food writer for New York Times, and she went to a food convention where new products were being offered to big food, and they tasted fantastic, but none of them were real, and none of them had any nutritional value, and it grossed her out. So she started researching it, and she put out a whole book about it. Again, it's called Pandora's Lunchbox. She looks at how years and years of food science have resulted in the cheapest, most abundant, most addictive, most nutritionally inferior food in the world, and she uncovers the startling evidence about the profound health implications of this packaged food and fast food that we're eating on a daily basis. If 53% of our children have chronic illness, that statistic I'm going to repeat all throughout this series. 53% of our children. I'm scared for them. There was another statistic that just came out that millennials' health peaks at 28 and then starts to go backwards. And it's because they're part of this fast food, processed food generation. The way back to health is to eat real food. So you need to be going to your local farmers markets. If it's on the Dirty Dozen list, you need to be buying it organic. If it's on the genetically modified list, you need to be buying it organic. And you need to be feeding your body all the colors of the rainbow because they work together in synergy in your body to create health. And we're choosing to go with convenience instead of choosing to go with health. So if you're going to eat real food, the thing that goes with that is you're going to cook. You have to cook so you can control what goes in your mouth. I agree with you. It's really easy to come home, pull out a box, pull something frozen out of your fridge that's been processed, or drive through the fast food line to get yourself something to eat. But you're not doing yourself any favor by doing that because you're not giving your body any building blocks to build a healthy body with. Okay? The problem with processed food and fast food is that they're loaded with MSG, and most people, I think, are not aware of the dire effects on the body of MSG. They're not aware that it's been rebranded under a multitude of names to hide the fact that it's still being put into our food. It is in 80% of our processed food. And it's a neurotoxin. Let's start with that. I personally would like to keep what brain cells I still have all the way till the end. And it's causing all kinds of adverse reactions like skin rashes, headaches, moodiness, irritability, IBS, heart palpitations, depression, and more, depending upon your tolerance. So we have different tolerances to MSG, but that doesn't mean you should be eating it because it's doing damage no matter what. How fast and how hard you get hit by these problems depends upon your ability to tolerate it. But regardless, eating foods laced with MSG are devastating to your organs. In short, MSG can make people feel lousy in the short term and potentially very, very sick in the long term. That's from Dr. Frank Lipman. He is a functional doctor in New York, and that's a pretty astonishing statement, so you need to pay attention. The Food and Drug Administration has recognized MSG as GRAS. What did I just tell you about GRAS? We need to learn ourselves what they're approving because too much money is involved passing with our politicians to protect our health. And so most of us are aware that MSG is unhealthy. Most of us are aware that genetically modified is unhealthy, and still we couldn't get anything passed through our Congress on getting proper labeling so that it was obvious that genetically modified foods were going into our products. A year ago, John and I went to England, and I had a copy of my book because I was going to be doing a podcast while I was there in England. And it ends up, her father fell down the stairs and we had to cancel our podcast, so I had this book. So I gave it to the young woman who was at the front desk of the hotel we were staying at in London because she was pregnant and she was really interested to read it. And before we left the hotel, we were only there, I think, 4 or 5 days. Everybody behind that desk had read the book. And the first thing they all shared with us was one difference between England and here was that they had more transparency than we did about where the genetically modified foods were in their food products. But when we just did our trade agreement with England, one of the things that we demanded in that trade agreement was that England would start to buy more of our glyphosate sprayed crops and our genetically modified crops. That was actually put into the trade agreement. Now, that's not good for people in England. That's a money thing. So beware. Money is speaking loudly, and you can protect yourself against big money. So make sure that you know what the issues are and believe yourself and do your own research before you believe something coming out of somebody else's mouth. What else does MSG do? It causes weight gain and obesity. It makes poor quality ingredients taste fantastic. Bully for it. Just because it tastes fantastic doesn't mean it's fantastic for your body. It causes inflammation and autoimmune disease. I have autoimmune disease. I don't need MSG causing me any more inflammation. And inflammation shows up in lots of different ways in the body. For me, it showed up as pain. And for most people with autoimmune disease, it shows up with pain. But it also is at the core of getting cancer. So you don't want that. And it's at the core of most heart disease. So you don't want that. Studies in mice show that MSG creates abnormal shaped and sized cells. Cancer. So 39 different names for MSG to hide in your food. And some of them are kind of astonishing. Some yeasts have MSG in them. Some gelatin has MSG in it. I buy grass-fed, grass-finished gelatin from grass-fed, grass-finished cows so that I don't get that MSG in there. Carrageenan has MSG in it. It's in everything. It's part of the reason that our pets are getting cancer because it's in all of our wet and dry pet food, but I even found it in toothpaste. So it's in milk products so that it doesn't separate. Check your labels. Look for carrageenan. It is not good for you. Maltodextrin has MSG in it. Barley malt has MSG in it. Anything that says it's enzyme modified has MSG in it. Soy sauce has MSG in it. We actually just found a non-soy sauce that's made from sea vegetables. And it's not bad, and it allows me now to have sushi again. So I'm excited to find it. So I'm starting to come up with products that sort of are like the original product, but they don't have the health damages that the original products have. And we just did a show on use this, not that, and I list what that product is that we use instead on that list. I don't remember the name of it right off the top of my head, or I would share it with you. Anything protein fortified has MSG in it. So glutamate often has MSG in it. So be careful of all this stuff and just know if you don't know what it is, don't buy it. It's that simple. Other reasons to avoid processed food. They are loaded with sugar. In fact, the big problem with sugar isn't from you putting a teaspoon of sugar on your cereal in the morning. It's what's in the food. What's in the food is where we're getting all of our huge amounts of sugar. And remember, 4 grams of sugar on the label of something equals 1 teaspoon of sugar. It's not very much. 4 grams is not very much. 1 whole teaspoon for every 4 grams. You'll be shocked at how much sugar you're actually eating. Processed foods are loaded with salt. They are designed to make you fat. They want to make you fat because by making you fat, you're going to want to eat more. They are designed to be addictive. They know they're putting things in them that are addictive, and they want to do that because they want you to eat more. They are loaded with preservatives, artificial ingredients, and artificial food dyes. Artificial food dyes have been directly connected to ADHD in children, so beware. And they're putting artificial food dyes into pet food. And trust me, the pet is colorblind. So it's not doing anything to get the pet to eat it. They're putting food dyes in it to get you to buy it and serve it to your pet. And it's harmful to your pet, so you don't want to be doing that. Processed foods are high in refined carbohydrates. They are low in nutrients. They are very low in fiber. It takes less time to digest processed food so that your brain doesn't register that it ate it at all and it wants more. And sugar and MSG are making that worse. Some of the chemicals in processed food are carcinogens. So if you don't know what it is, you don't want to eat it because it might be something that's going to cause cancer in your body. Processed foods are often loaded with bad fats and with the trans fats. And they're also loaded with the oils that are genetically modified, which are most of the vegetable oils. We went through what the good oils are, but the good oils are olive oil, that's olive green so that you know it's really olive oil. Olive oil, avocado oil is a good oil, coconut oil is a good oil. We use ghee because it has CLA oil in it, and all the milk solids have been taken out so that if you're dairy sensitive, you're probably not sensitive to ghee. Grapeseed oil is a good oil, and brown rice oil is a good oil. Some of the chemicals in processed foods are carcinogens. I just shared that. 70% of processed foods have genetically modified ingredients. 70%. That means Bt toxin is in 70% of what you're eating in processed foods. Most deli meats, bacon, cheeses, frozen foods all fall into this category, so read the ingredients. And again, if you can't pronounce it or it's outside the guidelines below, avoid the food. And so, food additives that they put into processed food often promote inflammation, colon cancer in mice, and is finding a direct link of food emulsifiers in processed foods to inflammation and cancer in mice. Dairy emulsifiers, which are chemically similar to detergents, are being added to processed foods to improve texture and extend shelf life. If you ever bought a McDonald's hamburger and left it on your kitchen counter, 2 years later it would still look like a McDonald's hamburger. Same thing with McDonald's French fries. Something that doesn't disintegrate is not a good thing, so think about that too. Recent research suggests that some emulsifiers actually affect your gut microbes in unexpected ways, at least in animals. The scientists at Georgia State University found that mice fed low levels of common dietary emulsifiers developed altered gut microbiota and thin mucus barrier protecting the lining of their intestines. Mice also developed low-grade intestinal inflammation and metabolic syndrome, which are conditions that increase type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. The colors that we're dying for are red 40, red 3, yellow 5, yellow 6, green 3, blue 1, and blue 2. Those are all the food dyes that are not good for us, so stay away from those. Okay, so that's our show for today. I want you to eat processed food that only has 5 ingredients that you recognize in it. That's kind of the rule of thumb. And if it has any ingredient that you can't pronounce or you don't know what it is, you stay away from it. You want to stay away from genetically modified foods, and you want to stay away from glyphosate, and take a stand in your community that you don't want glyphosate sprayed on your crops, on your public lands, on your schoolyards, on any of that, because it's bad for you. It's bad for your fur babies. It's really bad for your children. And one of the things that's really evident from all of the studying that I'm doing is children have little bodies and pets have little bodies. So these chemicals hit them much harder than they hit our adult bodies, which is why they process it and get sick so much worse than we are. It will catch up with us, but protect your children and protect your beloved pets and stay away from this stuff. Okay? So that's our show today. I'm sharing all this information because as your health muse, I want to inspire you to the best possible life and healthiest life that you can live. Come join me again next week and we'll have a brand new subject that we'll talk about that hopefully will enhance your life and your health.